Greetings from Providence. My name is Logan Powell, and I'm the Associate Provost for Enrollment and Dean of Admission at Brown University. I've served in this role for 8 fantastic years and hope to have many more to come. Brown is a really special place, and I hope that you're all able to discover some of what makes it so wonderful this evening. I'm really truly honored and delighted to welcome all of you to this conversation for prospective students and families about applying to Brown and what life is like here as a student. In just a moment, I'll introduce our very special speaker for the evening, the president of Brown University. Let me start, though, by offering my gratitude to all of you for making time to be with us. You likely have homework and college applications and dinner, maybe walks with the dog and time with the family to all think about this evening. I'd also like to thank all of the Brown staff who made this event possible. Though many of them are behind the scenes, they are critical to making this event a reality. Also, as you may have seen, this event is being recorded and we'll make it available to all of you tomorrow. In fact, we'll email everyone a link to the recording tomorrow morning. Next, let me tell you how fortunate I am to serve in this role as Dean of Admission at Brown. I have the great fortune of being able to meet students and families from all over the world. I've been able to read tens of thousands, literally tens of thousands of applications over the many years I've worked in college admissions. So I know the college application process can be stressful, confusing, sometimes opaque. I hope often exhilarating as well. I'm here to offer you my personal support and to remind you that your stress level is not a factor in the outcome of the decision-making process. So really, earnestly, try to learn something about yourself as you learn more about Brown and other great colleges and universities. Also remember that this is not the end. This is not the final step. This is just the next step in what we hope will be a wonderful college experience. We really hope you enjoyed this conversation and the opportunity to learn more about Brown. And while we can't answer every question of the hundreds and hundreds that were submitted, the questions we are addressing tonight came directly from you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker. President Paxson is a noted economist and public health expert. She has served as Brown University's 19th president and professor of economics and public policy since July 1st, 2012. Under her leadership, Brown has elevated teaching and research, developed the physical campus to support a world-class education, strengthened community engagement, and supported the students, faculty, and staff who live and work at Brown. I can't tell you how lucky we are to have her with us tonight, and please join me in welcoming President Paxson.
Thank you, Logan, and welcome everybody. I'm looking at the numbers on my Zoom screen. We have over 2,000 participants, which is amazing. So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming, whether it's evening or earlier or some other time zone for you. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to talk with you now. And my guess is that for some of you, you're seniors and you're trying to decide whether to submit on an ED application before November 1st. And others of you are probably earlier in the process and you're trying to figure out what schools would be the best fit for you in terms of academics and community and research opportunities and location and culture and all of the so many things that go into making the very important decision around where you'll apply to college. And it's a hard one. So I know what it's like, and you're all doing a good thing by being here to get as much information you can about different colleges. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and we'll spend the majority of our time tonight answering those questions. But first, I just want to start by giving you a sense of what characteristics are really unique to the Brown community. Like, what can you expect if you come to Brown? And I'll offer 3 points, and then we'll open it to discussion. And the first one that is really core to our culture and mission is that if you come to Brown, you can expect a very uncommonly open, student-centered, intellectually stimulating environment. So Brown's fourth president, and this was a long time ago because we're an old institution, and his name was Francis Wayland, and he set the bar really high on this. He insisted that students should be able to, and I quote, study what they choose, all that they choose, and nothing but what they choose. And this idea is expressed through our open curriculum, which gives students enormous freedom to be the architects of their own educations. And it fits with my view. One of the reasons why I love being at Brown is that college should be a daring adventure. It should not be a forced march. Now, there's a caveat here. A lot of people misunderstand the open curriculum. We do have concentrations in some other universities. Those are called majors. These do have requirements, and these ensure that if you come to Brown, you obtain very deep knowledge in your major area of study. But overlaid on this is extraordinary flexibility. So this approach is important. It's both rigorous and it's creative. It often results in very unusual and really great academic connections. And all the time I talk to students who are studying theater and public policy, or they're studying economics and artificial intelligence, or biology and poetry. And when I talk to students and say, what's the connection between those things? They can tell me what it is. Or there's students who are really moved to delve very deeply into fields that they maybe had no knowledge of when they first arrived at Brown. So this open student-centered intellectual environment, it's academically challenging. I would say that students at Brown work hard, but I can say that you will find, if you come here, great joy and satisfaction in mastering subjects that you choose with faculty who are really eager to teach you, which is an important point. So I remember during my time at Brown, I'm going around and talking to different faculty. I do that a lot. And one of our mathematics professors who taught at a place up the road before coming to Brown told me that this, being at Brown, was the best teaching he had ever done in his life. And when I asked why, he said, well, the students in my classes are there because they actually want to learn math. They're not being forced into taking the subject to fill a distribution requirement. And I think that's important. Being in classrooms with students who want to be there and faculty who want to teach what they're teaching, it makes for a really amazing learning environment. So that's point number one. The second is that what we're trying to do for every student who comes up to Brown is to provide unmatched transformational opportunities. So it's not just about what happens in the classroom. It's how you integrate the classroom learning with experience out in the world. So here at Brown, our undergraduate students are full partners with graduate students and faculty. They work in labs, they work with professors on research, they're on, named authors on papers, they take graduate classes, they conduct independent projects that lead to publishable works, and they start entrepreneurial ventures, which is great. Education and research are fundamental to our mission of advancing knowledge and understanding. I see them, and Brown sees them, as being mutually reinforcing. And one of our top priorities right now is growing research, which means more opportunities for students to engage in the research process. So Brown students from first years on up are encouraged to be full partners in the enterprise of knowledge creation. That's what universities do. So, when I look at what our students are doing, they're exploring and measuring the effects of air pollution in Providence. They're studying marine life in the Galapagos Island, the effects of the pandemic on communities around the world, issues related to the legacy of slavery and justice. I mean, I could go on, but they are involved in knowledge creation. We have a center called the Jonathan Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship. It was launched in 2016, so it's relatively new. It's in a beautiful new building in the heart of campus. And the Center for Entrepreneurship plays a really important role because students go beyond the sort of theoretical role of like what could make the world better to being challenged to say, well, okay, develop solutions with impact to make the world better. At our Swear Center for Public Service, which is closely allied with the Nelson Center, you'll find community engagement opportunities locally and beyond in nonprofit organizations and schools and clinics and government service and things like that. I don't know how many of you have been to Providence yet. And Providence is an amazing city. We're fortunate to be located in the city. It's beautiful. And what it means is that our students, because we're in this really great campus, but it's nested in an urban environment, our students have an opportunity to have an incredible impact on the local community. So they're engaging in volunteer efforts with K-12 schools and hospitals and clinics and so many more things, which is a really important thing. So I'll give you one example, just one, out of the thousands that I could give you. So a student named Alice, current senior at Brown. Alice came to Brown as a pre-med student. And then she got a Bonner Fellowship through the Swear Center for Public Service. And she had the opportunity to do engaged research in the city of Providence with students and parents on issues of educational equity. That's one thing. Then she took a summer trip to Tougaloo College, which is a historically Black college in Mississippi. And Brown has had nearly a 60-year partnership with Tougaloo. We'll be celebrating that next year. And Alice learned more about how impactful policy work can support communities. Next step. Third step, she did a Brown and Washington semester interning in the White House. And now she's considering a career in healthcare policy. She may go to medical school, she may not. But through these experiences, she's really learned how she can take her education and use it for impact. I also want to highlight something that I'm very excited about, which is our new Center for Career Exploration. It was launched earlier this year, replacing what we previously called the Career Lab. This new center is anchored in Brown's student-centered learning approach. And with it, what we're doing is significantly expanding career support through personalized advising, one-on-one mentoring, lots of experiential learning opportunities from research to internships to student jobs. And these kinds of immersive learning experiences help our students understand which career paths are a great fit. And I think almost as importantly, which ones aren't. So, trying out things and saying it's not for me is really valuable. Now, this may sound like it's a very long way away from today, especially if you're juniors or sophomores, but graduation from college is going to be here before you know it. It's fast. And we're proud to be able to offer advising that's tailored to a wide range of professional pathways that will equip our graduates for really a 21st century workforce. And if you look at the stats, and that's important to do, you're doing your homework as you consider where to apply. After Brown, our graduates are getting into the best law schools, the best medical schools, graduate programs, and they're working at some of the most innovative tech, media, finance firms, startups, what have you. We've been among the very top Fulbright producers in the nation for 7 consecutive years. So, what I say to students is studying what you love can lead to a life of doing what you love. The third thing that I want to make, and then I'll turn into Q&A, is if you apply to Brown and if you come to Brown, you can expect to have a really supportive community at your back. And Brown is a community in the best sense of the word. It's composed of people who really care for each other. And when I talk to students and I say, what's the most amazing thing about Brown? They say, it's the friends I've met, it's the people I've met. And I think that's true. You come to Brown, you'll learn from each other, you will compete with yourself, but you'll support each other and you'll have fun together. And I think it's also important to note that you can and should expect to be challenged by new ideas. But in a setting that champions vigorous, open, and informed debate, we believe in freedom of expression, but as part of a respectful and welcoming community that stands for inclusion and diversity and open space for all views. And above all, you can really expect Brown to prepare you to have an impact in the world. So, Brown students, I talk to them all the time. They're tackling global challenges, poverty, inequality, climate change, starting new programs. And one thing I love is the way that we partner with students to make the university better. And that was through one example. We established the UFly Center, which is the Ivy League's first center ever for first-generation low-income students. And we attract students who want to come to Brown who are intent on putting their education to work and mattering in the lives of others. So, you have a lot of choices to think about, lots of different schools, different characteristics. If what I've said sounds like you, then I encourage you to apply. And with that, we'll open it up to questions. Logan and I will take everything that you can throw at us. So thank you. And I will introduce Sydney Menzen, who is going to moderate a discussion. Sydney works in my office. She is a Brown alum, fairly recent, not that recent, but fairly recent. And she'll take questions that have been pre-submitted in advance and some that are coming in through the Q&A and pitch them to Logan and to me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, President Paxson. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Menzen, and as President Paxson mentioned, I am a project manager in her office, and I'm also a very proud alum of the class of 2017. So I'm very happy to be here tonight to be moderating this Q&A with President Paxson and Dean Powell, and thank you all so much for being here. So with that, I would like to begin this conversation with a question for you, President Paxson. I know that you touched on this in your remarks, but it would be wonderful to hear more about what makes the Brown experience unique and how is it different from other highly selective universities?
Yeah, Sydney, that's a really great question. It's hard to answer because there's so many highly selective universities. They all have their own cultures and characters. But if I were to say what really makes Brown distinctive, it's the open curriculum. And this is the important part, the kinds of students and faculty who are attracted to come to Brown because of that. And at the end, it's all about the people you're around. The campus is beautiful, the city is great, but you want to come to a place where you're going to meet with and be with students who are, colleagues, interesting, creative, different than you. And I think we should talk later about diversity, but who have just a richer experience, and faculty who are truly committed to teaching you. So I would say it's the people, the openness, and the commitment to superb undergraduate education. I'd love to know what Logan thinks about that.
I totally agree. I think there's so many great schools out there, and I see college campuses, university campuses all the time, and they're each incredible in their own way. But I think the collaboration, I think there's some things that you can physically experience, and then I think there are sort of the interpersonal relationships that you'll feel. I think it's a beautiful campus. I think Brown has one of the most beautiful campuses in the entire country. I think Providence is one of the great college cities in America. And I think we have a collaborative community that's really hard to find. And I think that combination is unique.
I definitely agree. Thank you. Dean Powell, a question for you. Prospective students on the call with us tonight would like to know, what qualities do you look for in an applicant?
This is the $64,000 question, isn't it? This is, let me start by saying a couple of things that I hope are helpful to understand the big picture of what we do and how we do it. We begin the admission process every year with a series of commitments to ourselves and to all of our applicants. Number one, we review everyone as an individual. There are no caps, cutoffs, quotas. We look at every individual student as just that, an individual with a set of attributes and talents and characteristics that are entirely their own. Next, and I can't say this enough, I will say it now and I may emphasize it later, there are no formulas for admission. What worked for one person last year or the year before is not what's going to work for someone in this Zoom webinar. Every student should be themselves because that's the only person they can be. So don't think that there's a formula for admission. There are no formulas in the work that we do because it is individualized. The next promise that I make to every applicant and a commitment that we have here in the admission office is to review applicants in context. And so what does that mean? It means that we're never comparing one student with a certain set of opportunities to another student with a different set of opportunities. We look at every individual as a whole person, and we look at every individual in the context in which they were educated and raised. That's really important to us, and I hope that it resonates with the students who are here in this webinar, because our commitment is to look for the very best of every individual in the applicant pool. We are, and it sounds trite, but we are looking for the best in you. We are not looking for the things that that may not be the strongest parts of your application. We're always looking for the things that make you shine. Also, and I think this really bears some emphasis because I think sometimes you can go to various websites or, you hear rumors about what it takes to get into a highly selective institution. And I hear from students all the time who ask how they should be well-rounded to be competitive for Brown. And, what things can they add to their resume or to their extracurricular portfolio to make them more well-rounded and more competitive. And to all of you, the students in this webinar, I would say, be yourselves. We do admit well-rounded students. We also are very fond of what we affectionately refer to as well-lopsided students. So whether you do a lot of things and you are one of those well-rounded students, or whether you're really angular and you have followed a particular pursuit or interest to a really deep level, please know that what we're looking for is a well-rounded class of diverse and talented and interesting and intellectually engaged students. And so you shouldn't try to be everything. You should be yourself and you should follow those interests. Really importantly, and I just want to end with this, Sydney, for everyone who's with us this evening, is you really don't want to go into this process trying to be what we, the Brown Office of College Admission, think you should be. Don't try to anticipate what we want. Just be yourselves, be the best version of yourself. That will shine through in the application, and we really will value that and will cherish it. Really trust yourself, be yourself, obviously seek good counsel and advice, and know that you're going to find a wonderful college home, either here on College Hill or at some other great school.
Thank you. President Paxson, we spoke a bit about the open curriculum, and I was wondering if you could speak more to how it impacts student learning opportunities while they're at Brown, as well as after graduation.
So the open curriculum is, when I talk to students at Brown and I say, why did you come here? The most common first reason, there are many reasons, right? But the most common first reason is the open curriculum. And I think it's more than just a curriculum. It's more than just a set of rules about the fact that you can take courses from different areas and, fewer constraints and things like that. I think it represents a philosophy that's really important, which is that we trust our students to be able, with good advice, to figure out what's going to work for them and what's going to advance their learning and their engagement in their studies and move on to what they do in their lives. And that approach attracts students who are curious, self-motivated, creative, and you can see that what that does for students after they leave Brown. So, our students are doing many, many different things. They're going into, graduate schools, they're doing entrepreneurial ventures, you name it. But I think the one thing, if I had to characterize Brown alumni, is this kind of self-confidence, ability to figure out what they want to do, what's important in the world, and their desire to make an impact in whatever pursuit they follow. And I know that sounds like a lot more than what a curriculum delivers, but again, it's more than just a curriculum, it's a philosophy of education, and it's a philosophy of empowering students and graduating empowered alumni and adults. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dean Powell, a handful of audience members asked about standardized tests. How heavily do standardized test scores weigh in this year's application process?
Thank you, Sydney. Yeah, you can't go too far into any of these conversations without broaching the subject of standardized testing. I know it's on the minds of a lot of the students and families who are with us tonight. So, I think it has become so much more complicated in recent years because of the interpretations or misinterpretations of how schools, colleges, and universities use standardized testing. And so, our commitment in these conversations is always to give students the best information we can about how we use all of the information that's part of the application process. So a bit of background. Brown University, like the rest of the Ivy Plus schools, became test optional as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. At that point, test centers, College Board, and ACT testing sites literally closed for public health concerns, and understandably so. As a result of that, we obviously couldn't require students to take tests that they didn't have access to. So we have been test optional since 2020. We're test optional again this year in the 23-24 admission cycle. Let me say a little bit more about this, though, because standardized testing really can be informative. But let me also make this important point. It is never determinative of an outcome in our process. So students with wonderful scores, even perfect scores, sometimes admitted, sometimes not admitted, because it's not the test score that is the reason a student is admitted to Brown or not. It's just another piece of information. It's part of the puzzle we put together of a student and applicant's academic background. But we're not looking for perfection across the board. We're looking for potential, we're looking for growth, we're looking for improvement, we're looking for students who have taken advantage of all of the educational opportunities that have been available to them. And so putting test scores in context, let me just maybe say a couple things that are really helpful. I hope will be really helpful to the students who are with us tonight. We are test optional, but if you think your test scores represent your academic ability, you certainly should consider submitting them. Likewise, if you come from a high school wherever in the world and your test scores are really exceptional in context, you should really consider submitting your test scores. Now, I think too many students are overly concerned with what the Brown median test scores are for admitted students or what the ranges are for admitted students, and it's worth looking at them. I wouldn't obsess over them, but it's worth looking at them. But please understand that what we're really looking for is how well students have done in their context. And it's important to make this point. We have a great number of applicants whose test scores might be below the Brown median for admitted students, but because they have excelled in their context, they can still stand out in our application process. And so I would encourage students to think about both of those things, where their test scores are relative to our median, but also where their test scores are relative to their high school median. And those students who far exceed their high school median test score, it really should consider submitting their test scores, because it will be demonstration that they are exceptional in their local context. And that's something that always stands out to us, regardless of where a student comes from.
Thank you. Our next question is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. President Paxson, can you talk about Brown's commitment to diversity and how the university fosters an inclusive environment for students from diverse communities?
Thank you, Sydney. This is something I care a lot about. And when I welcomed our first year class at Convocation this year, I talked about it. So you can look that up online. It's there, my Convocation speech. You know, I would say this. I am very committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment at Brown. And the reason is important. The reason is that it's a cornerstone of academic excellence. It's essential for doing what we do as a university. So think about it. You know, when you go to college, you're not going to be around a lot of people who think, look, have the same experiences as you. Why would you want to do that, right? You want to go to be challenged. You want to learn about new things. You want to be around people who are different. And the discussions in classrooms, the discussion in dorms is going to be shaped by the diversity of that community. So, you know, I believe, and I take a very broad view of diversity. We want students from, you know, a wide range of backgrounds, experiences. We want rural students, urban students. We want students from a wide range of religious backgrounds. And most recently, we're moving very quickly towards becoming need blind for international students, so that we'll have more socioeconomic diversity among our international students. And it's so important for the experiences that students have. Now, so that's diversity, right? Really important for our academic outcomes. And I think our students really value it. Our responsibility is to make sure that every student who comes to Brown can thrive and succeed. And so we have a set of supports, different programs in place, so that students who come from different backgrounds, maybe they're not, haven't been exposed to higher education in the past. We have a first-gen low-income student center, which is phenomenal. We have a center for our veteran students and military-affiliated students, and other ways that we really try to bring people in and say, look, you belong here, no matter where you come from, and you're an important part of the community. So it's a combination of valuing diversity and then making sure that all of our students, every single one, has the tools they need to thrive, to love their experience and be really successful. So I don't know, Logan, if you want to add to that, but it's an important and powerful part of the Brown community.
I couldn't agree more. And if I could just add two things really quickly, President Paxson, that that you and I have talked about, that we talk about and are committed to at the university. And this is really important. And both of these things are really important. Number one, I think, some colleges and universities or organizations, institutions will talk about their compositional diversity. Compositional diversity is the first part of the experience that you gain when you are part of a community as inspirational as the Brown community is. So it's not just enough to bring those students in from so many different backgrounds. I think the beauty of Brown is that those students interact with each other. So, you have a student from, rural Arkansas who is the roommate of a student from the south side of Chicago, and they're, both members of a club with someone who is, coming here from Nairobi, Kenya, and on it goes. And so, that collaborative sort of intermingling of ideas and individuals is really what makes that diversity is so special. Diversity really is only a benefit to an organization when people from different backgrounds interact with each other. And that's something that we really cherish and we try to cultivate here. The other thing that I want to mention, and this is something that President Paxson, you've been a real leader on, and you mentioned it in your introductory remarks, and that's about what I call ideological diversity. It's freedom of expression, but I think it's really important to everyone who's here with us to know that in the admission process, we look for students who actually have really different ways of seeing the world. They have different lenses through which they see the world, and they're willing to engage with people with very different perspectives in a civil way, using civil discourse. They want to learn from people who think completely differently than they do. They want to challenge other people's ideas as they have their own ideas challenged, and be best friends at the end of it all. And so I think that kind of intellectual and ideological diversity is something that we've really worked hard to build over the years, and something that President Paxson has been committed to.
And I would say, we have a lot of our programming, campus life and other areas. A lot of the work that happens outside the classroom is designed to facilitate the interactions of students from across very different backgrounds. And that contributes to the kinds of things that you're talking about, Logan. It's so important.
That's actually a great segue to what my next question is, which is about community building. And you both mentioned different centers and other opportunities outside of the classroom to make connections. I'm wondering if you could speak to more specific examples of students building those connections.
So I think Brown takes the prize for having more clubs and organizations than any university. I don't know the number, it just astounds me. And I've often described Brown as sort of students are usually, it's a set of overlapping tribes. I mean, students are not involved, they're not identified by only one thing. So, you talk to a student who's like, yeah, I am in an a cappella group, and I like to hang out at the Brown Center for Students of Color. And I'm also a member of the Center for Philosophy, Politics, and Economics. And I'm also a Meiklejohn peer advisor. And what that kind of portfolio does is it puts them in all of these really interesting and overlapping groups. So there's a lot to choose from. I mean, at the beginning of the year, there's an activities fair where students are going around. There are all these tables set up on the main green. You can learn about all the opportunities. And my advice to students is, don't pick 6 right away, pick maybe 4. And then figure out what you really love and then go from there. But there are lots of opportunities, not only for students to get involved in things that are existing, but also to create their own groups, clubs, whatever, and take it from there in very creative ways.
Dean Powell, anything to add?
Absolutely, Sydney. And just from a recent conversation, I get to know as many students here as I possibly can. I had this great conversation with one of our student veterans last night. He's just a wonderful, wonderful student here. I'll refer only to his first name. His name is Paul. He is just a superstar here at Brown. He was in the Marine Corps. He served in the Marine Corps for a number of years before coming here. So we had this great hour-long conversation last night, he and I learned even more about him. I knew a little bit about him from having read his application. What I didn't know that I discovered in this conversation I had with him last night, not only is he obviously a member of our student veterans organization on campus, he's also part of an organization called CAMP, K-A-M-P. It's the Korean American Mentorship Program, where they advise local families who have adopted babies from Korea on Korean culture. So he has become a mentor to adoptive families here in the Providence area. He's also an active member of his local church group. I think he also plays club rugby. So, students here get engaged in a whole lot of things, and they do those things because they love them. And so that's one example. And I think, you could probably pick any student from campus here and they would tell you stories of equally diverse interests and deep passions for the things that they do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'd like to shift gears now and talk about financial aid. So, Dean Powell, can you talk about Brown's approach to financial aid?
Absolutely. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, both personally and professionally. I need to say this personally first to underscore my commitment to this. I grew up in a very low income household. We grew up with federal food assistance, a single parent household. My mother was a secretary her entire life. We lived on really donated food and federal assistance programs. I was a Pell Grant recipient when I went to college. My mom was really honest with me when I was applying to college, and she said, "You're on your own, kid. There is no money for you in this house. So I love you, work hard, and I hope you find a place that will fund your education." I was very fortunate to be able to do that with the assistance of a Pell Grant. So the reason I start with that is that I know personally what it's like to not know whether or not you can afford the cost of a college education. I think I can safely speak for President Paxson when I also say that it has been one of our greatest commitments here at Brown to strengthen the resources for students who need financial aid so that they feel the sense of access and affordability that we have worked so hard to achieve over the years. So let me run through a few highlights. And I know that President Paxson and I could talk about this for probably an entire day because we feel so passionately about it. But let me.
Logan, we only have 20 more minutes. So don't go too far, but you're right. It's so important, right?
It is incredibly important. And I want to give some of the highlights here so that there's context and some specifics. This will be very brief. Number one, we're need blind for all domestic first-year applicants. That means that we consider your application regardless of your ability to pay for the cost of education. Number two, we guarantee to meet your full demonstrated need. So whatever your demonstrated need is, we will meet it. Number three, we removed packaged loans from all of our financial aid awards in 2008, starting in 2018, as part of the Brown Promise. Brown Promise can be considered the shorthand for a no loan program. That is to say, if you come to Brown and you receive financial aid, you can graduate debt-free. Last year, in addition to that, we removed home equity as an asset consideration. What does that mean in real terms? In real terms, it means that we're not looking at any equity you have in your primary residence to borrow against to afford the cost of an education. That meant an additional $8,000 plus to every family who owned their home who received financial aid at Brown. Additionally, we also have a relatively new book and course material support program that allows us to cover full cost of books and course materials for any student receiving financial aid at Brown. As President Paxson mentioned, starting in 2025 with the class of 2029, we will also be need blind for international students. To put this in context, and this is really important to put this in context, there are only 18 colleges and universities in the entire country that are need blind, that meet full demonstrated need without loans. That's really rare. Of those 18, only 7 of them are also need blind for international students. And so we are soon to be in that group. Very, very rare. Let me give you just a couple quick examples of how that plays out. So in this incoming class, the first year class of 2027, 52% receive financial aid. 15% of the class are Pell Grant recipients. The average need-based scholarship this year is a little over $60,000 per family. The next two things I want to say are really important because I think it gives context and detail for families out there relative to what you're earning. For families earning less than $60,000 per year with typical assets, Brown will cover the entire cost of attendance. For families making between $60,000 and $100,000 a year with typical assets, Brown will cover the entire cost of tuition. So we really are committed to this. We really believe that Brown is made stronger by being accessible and affordable to highly talented students from any socioeconomic background without regard to their ability to pay the cost of tuition.
Yeah, and I would add, what Logan is talking about is the formal financial aid that comes out of his office. But in addition, we've done a lot to build up grants for summer opportunities. So students, I remember meeting a student early in my time at Brown. I'm now in my 12th year who had an internship at the White House and said, I can't afford to go. I can't afford to live in Washington. And we made it happen for her. And then we really expanded our support for summer internships and research opportunities so that students who, they may be on Brown for financial aid, but they need these great summer opportunities. So I think of that as going right alongside the financial aid to make sure that when our students graduate, the opportunities that they've had are the same regardless of the circumstances that they've come from financially.
Thank you both. My next question is open to the two of you, and it is about one of my favorite things, which is exploring College Hill and beyond. So as we mentioned, Brown is located in the amazing city of Providence. Can you two tell us what is it like to live here? And what are opportunities for Brown students to get involved in the community?
Who wants to start?
President Paxson, I always defer to you.
No, so I really love Providence. It is a small city. It's walkable, it's dynamic, it's got a great food culture, and it's changed a lot in the last 5-10 years of becoming more dynamic and more fun. So I think, it used to be that Providence was not a selling point of Brown. Providence is a selling point for Brown. Students come, they see the campus, they say it's beautiful, they see the city, they say it's great. So I'm a big Providence fan. I do think that having Providence so accessible, right? Literally, you walk, everybody who comes to Providence, Brown gets a free bus pass, you can go anywhere you want. What it means for students in terms of what they do is that they can get very easily involved in things that in a university that's a little bit farther away from a major city is harder. So if you want to get involved in local politics, it's a 15-minute walk to the State House, or even less to to City Hall. If you want to get involved in medical research, you can get to all of the hospitals that are doing that work, or the labs, or if you want to be, do work at the Rhode Island Free Clinic, where we have a great partnership. Students are there all the time. So the great thing about Providence is you go around, Brown students are everywhere because it's easy to get there. And that makes it, so the fun social stuff is great, but the ability to do this kind of work that enhances your education is I think, really powerful.
I love Providence. I feel like I'm an unofficial spokesperson for the Chamber of Commerce for the city of Providence, because I really do love it, and I'm being totally sincere. As evidence of that commitment, I actually live downtown. I walk to work every day. President Paxson has seen me walking my dog through Providence. I explore.
Well, I walk to work too, and our dogs know each other, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's an incredible walking city. It's an incredible food city. There's a vibrant arts culture, music culture. I think there's a great creativity to the city, and it's a really close-knit community. Because it's not overwhelmingly large. You really get to know people. It's not so small that you see the same people every day. Trust me on this. You can go to different restaurants every weekend for an entire year. So it's big enough that you really can sort of feel like you've gotten away from campus, but you're not going to get lost in Providence. And so I think it's a wonderful mix, and it's just it's an incredibly dynamic and vibrant city. And I've loved living here for 8 years.
It's very racially diverse, ethnically diverse. So there are lots of fairs, festivals, and that adds to the fun of it too.
Mm-hmm.
President Paxson.
Wait, Sydney, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do you like about Providence? You went to Brown.
Oh boy. Well, I am a very big fan of Providence. That's also partly why I return now as Brown staff. I would say I really appreciate all the different arts festivals and activities that happen in the community. I know just this upcoming weekend, there's a fun fall festival over on our Wickenden Street right near campus where local vendors will come and and sell their art and materials. So excited to check that out, and a lot of great coffee shops and restaurants, as were mentioned. So always something fun to do.
Good, thank you.
Absolutely. So President Paxson, speaking about things that we enjoy doing, exciting things that are happening on campus, you talked about the launch of the Center for Career Exploration. I know that there is a new Performing Arts Center being opened later this fall. What are you most looking forward to this year?
Oh, there's a lot going on this year. So we are opening the Lindemann Performing Arts Center. And this has been a project that has been a long time in coming. It's spectacular. And the point of the Lindemann is to bring great artists to Brown to work with faculty and students, and also to provide great performance space, practice space, rehearsal space, creation space for our students. And, you know, Brown has a very creative student body. And a lot of students, you know, they be majoring in biology or in physics or in English, but they're doing the arts. So I'm excited about this. At the opening weekend, we're going to have the Brown Symphony Orchestra performing with some amazing guest performers and a lot of other creative things going on. The week after the opening of the Lindemann, we have a Black alumni reunion at Brown, which is going to be very exciting. We're dedicating the Rights and Reason Theater, which is, again, part of the arts, but it's one of the oldest theaters in America dedicated to civil rights theater, which is fantastic. And then some other things, you know, new academic programs. We have a new concentration in Native and Indigenous studies, which is just rolling out, which I'm excited about. So there's a lot of good things going on. But I think the Performing Arts Center is maybe at the top of my list.
Great, thank you. Well, we have time for just about one more question here, and I want to give you both the opportunity to answer. So President Paxson and Dean Powell, what advice do you have for applicants and their families as they navigate college applications this fall?
President Paxson, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go?
Why don't you go first? This is your turf, right? You're an expert here.
All right. So thank you, President Paxson. You know, I'm going to say something that I think could be its own entire hour-long conversation. Again, we're time limited, so I will keep this brief. I think with the proliferation, let's call it, of technologies that are available to help, you know, with creativity, with the generation of text, I think students may feel that they can rely too much on those things. So I'm speaking specifically of the use of artificial intelligence. It's an incredible tool. I mean, it is absolutely mind-blowing. But I think the thing that students should remember is to create the work themselves and to be themselves in the application. There are so many different voices that applicants hear when they start the application process. And I think the vast majority of them are very well-intentioned and they have really good advice, but it can become overwhelming. And so my advice to students as they start this process is remember who you are and really try to think about your own voice in this process. Because as you're getting all of this information about, you know, what people hope you'll do, where they hope you'll apply, what they hope you'll write about in your essays, it can get to be a lot. And so what I would advise you with all humility is to remember who you are at your core and to express that in the application process. And then also to trust that you're going to have some great college options. You know, if you're looking at Brown, and you're looking at some other really highly selective institutions. And so please know that whether you go to Brown or you go somewhere else, you're going to be terrific. And so, you know, there are going to be some ups and downs as you go through this college application process, but you're going to come out on the other side of it incredibly happy. Trust me. Everyone who goes to a college in the Brown orbit ends up a very, very happy person. Of course, we hope you apply here. We hope those of you who are admitted choose to enroll, but trust yourselves, trust your instincts, and trust that everything will work out well.
So what do I have to add to that? I mean, I do think the last thing you said, which is trust your instincts, is probably the most important. And when I talk to people who've come to Brown and I say, like, why did you decide to come here? And they'll talk about the open curriculum and the great environmental studies program or the arts programs or whatever. But at the end of the day, what really drove them was this feeling in their gut when they stood in the middle of the main green and said, this is where I'm going to find my people, and this is where I'm going to be my best self. That's the most important thing. And that's really trusting your instincts and knowing who you are and not listening to other people who tell you what you should be thinking. So I think that's important. It's all about the best match for you. And the best match for you may be Brown. It may be another school. That's fine. And there may be multiple schools that are right for you. So this exploration process it's a little anxiety provoking, I know, for you and probably for your families too. But it can also be really fun saying, where do I belong? What's going to be good for me? And that can be really rewarding. So I wish you all the best as you go through this. I hope this webinar has been helpful to you and that you all find places that are fantastic for you. And I do hope you apply to Brown. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much, President Paxson and Dean Powell, for taking the time to answer these questions tonight. And thank you so much, folks on the call, for joining us. Dean Powell, I will turn it over to you for any final words.
Thank you, Sydney. A shout out to you for moderating this. You were fantastic. Really appreciate your questions. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. As I mentioned in the beginning, I knew we couldn't get through all of them. There were literally hundreds of them that were submitted. We tried to combine them and cover those that were the most popular. And so I hope it's been helpful. Want to thank my wonderful colleague, Colin Sullivan, who has been putting additional information into the chat for everyone, additional resources that are available on our website to learn more about Brown. I have to, of course, thank President Paxson for being available. I can tell you all on the Zoom tonight that President Paxson is the busiest person at Brown, probably the busiest college president anywhere in the country. And so for her to spend this time with us is really a great honor. I want to say just a couple words really quickly, and then President Paxson, I'll turn it over to you for any concluding remarks that you have. Again, my sincere thanks to you and to everyone who was able to join us and to the members of the staff who were supporting this program. I really look forward to getting to know as many of you as possible during the course of this application process this year or next year, depending on what year you are. This is really a deeply personal, human-centric process. And so even though the numbers can be overwhelming at times, you may look at various data points and think that this is just too much and that you're going to be, just one of many in this process. I want you to know, I want you to trust that we consider every one of you as individuals. We're honored if you choose to apply, and our commitment is to get to know you as well as we possibly can individually and contextually. It's always really fun to be able to get to know more about our Brown applicants, and our commitment is to find the very best in what you have to offer. So I hope you do apply if Brown is the right fit for you, and I look forward to getting to know more of you as the year goes along. And President Paxson, I'll leave it to you to conclude.
Thank you. And just a few brief remarks. Thank you for all the work you do, Dean Powell and Sydney. Thank you, and everybody else who planned this. And for all of you for coming and for your interest in the university. This is such an exciting time for you. And I wish all of you the very best in finding what's going to bring you joy in life and what's going to make you be your best self. So I wish I could see your faces. There are over 2,400 of you, so that's not going to work on a Zoom screen, but we are looking forward to those of you who apply to Brown to really getting to know you as people. And that's a really wonderful experience. So thank you for coming, and I wish you all a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.